Here, let's go right back into the KUAM News Zoom room where we have Education Superintendent Jon Fernandez standing by. Good morning, John.
Hafide, good morning. You hear
Hi.
me okay?
Yeah, we're good. How about you?
Oh, good. There's a car alarm going off in the background. I don't know if you can hear it, so I'm just hoping you can hear me okay. Plus, my voice has kind of worn thin over the last couple of weeks. And yesterday we had a hearing with our education committee, so spent a lot of time on that with the budget and a lot of other issues. So
Right.
I think I can make it today.
So let's talk about that budget, right? So, what has your discussion been with are you discussing this with Senator Nelson, the oversight chair?
Well, there's a lot of. I mean, I think I mentioned yesterday. There's just a lot of moving parts right now as far as it goes when you're discussing the budget. So we start way back in October. That's at the beginning of our current fiscal year, trying to plan for the next fiscal year. So which begins next October, this coming October. And so we work through October, November, December at the school level, at the division level to assemble a budget request. We bring it to the board, and in January, the board goes through several work sessions to approve that request and submit it to the legislature by the end of January, and that's required by law. And then between January and probably about August is when the final decision has to be made. And this year especially, there are just so many things that could happen that are pending as well that we have to pay attention to. So number one, we put our budget request in, a very large request, about $373 million, reflecting all the needs that our stakeholders told us we needed to address in our budget. But then we recognize that the governor submitted her budget, and recognizing that there is a very uncertain revenue projection for the coming year. So we know that we're in a difficult situation as an island financially, but we also know that there are other things that might be coming our way in terms of federal funds that might be available, federal funds that we're getting right now, but also another package on the Hill that I think is being discussed for even more federal funding between now and August. So like I told the legislature, we recognize that we're in a difficult situation. The revenues are uncertain. The economy has been hit hard, but we also know that there, with the federal government package being discussed right now, there may be support being provided to help offset some of the deeper cuts that might be envisioned, and also provide support to the community. So hopefully by August, we'll be able to sort all of that out and come to a decision that helps everybody, helps our community move forward into next year.
Right, John. I just kind of wanted to go into we got a couple messages from parents about and I think this is the ESF funding, which includes school supplies, right? That were purchased for every student enrolled. And then, can you kind of walk us through what kind of supplies they got and how we're doing on the distribution? Because we're just hearing things from different teachers and parents that they haven't all got out to where they need to go. Is that accurate?
Well, I think it really depends. So I think the issue is we hear issues like that here and there, and so it always helps us. I don't know, Chris or Sabrina, if those parents want to let me know which school. It helps us because sometimes we get those concerns and realize that it really is something that can be handled at the school level. So, for instance, whether it's school supplies or even the safety, the PPEs that are out of the schools, sometimes we get notice that the school is short on supplies, or they haven't been given out, and we go back to our numbers here, and we see the vast numbers of supplies that have been provided to the schools, and realize that it may not be all distributed either to the teachers or to the students, because maybe the administrator is not fully releasing all the supplies at once, or there's some other type of distribution situation happening. So I'm not aware of any. I haven't. That's the first I've heard in terms of that concern. The school supplies that were provided were really to offset what we anticipated would, typically be those types of items that teachers might ask, the parents or students to bring in additional, writing instruments, additional, composition books, for, pen and paper or pencil and paper, those types of basics that are provided. So we did put together enough resources to provide students with those supplies, and they would need to be, picked up at school during one of the distributions. So again, if you, if the parent wants to, through you, send me a note of which school we're talking about, we can check in and see if they had any issues. We do know that sometimes, they have to do it by hard copy distribution or on those distribution days. And if those families are unable to get there or, don't go at the designated time, that may have been a missed opportunity.
I have,
we can
John, sorry, JQ, GW were a couple of the schools that were mentioned to us.
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. We can check in on that.
Okay.
Hi, John. So,
hey, Sabrina. Good morning, Sabrina.
Morning.
Hey, everybody. Sabrina's here. Good morning, Bree. Can't just sneak in here. I just want to say good morning because people were asking about you earlier. They're like, "Hey, your desk is empty." I was like, "She's coming. She's here." Good morning.
I didn't know whether to say good morning to you either.
Well,
yeah, I'm on a new schedule for the moment.
Yeah.
So 373 million, is that correct? The budget that you submitted to the legislature for next fiscal year. So is it 110 in ESF money that you guys received?
So $110 million is in the ESF. We call it ESF 2. So yes, that's the funding from the federal government that we're currently working through to get a budget put together and approved, hopefully within the next few weeks.
Mm-hmm. And so how does that work? So you get the 110 million, you wait for it to be approved by the feds, right? So how do you determine how much of the 110 can offset the 373?
So that's like the magic question that's out there, because and we know, definitely knowing that the island situation and our revenue situation, we know that's a big question. And so I tried to answer for the legislature yesterday. In the assurances that have to be signed as a condition for getting the grant, right, for getting this money, there is a requirement for the state, and in this case, the outlying areas, Guam would be considered the state. There's a requirement that the state provide a maintenance of effort, and the maintenance of effort is defined as the state. The average state support provided to elementary, secondary, and post-secondary education on Guam for fiscal years 2017 through 2019. So it takes a 3-year period, prior to the enactment of the CARES Act. It takes that three-year period and says, give us the average amount of state support that was provided, and that's the maintenance of effort that you need to provide. And then beyond that, the federal government's funding can be utilized. So, we informed the legislature that was a requirement. It's still in there for both ESF 1 and ESF 2. It also applies to the money that the governor got, which was an additional 12.5 in the first round and 33, in the second round. And as long as that requirement's in there, it means that it can be a direct offset of any any decline in the local budget. It says that the government still needs to provide a minimum level of support, and then the federal government will add its resources to that.
Right.
So I guess that's the best statement I could provide. There is a subsection there that says, well, in a particular extreme circumstances, we will allow you to apply for a waiver of this requirement. However, that waiver process doesn't happen until September of this year. I think that's when it will begin. So by that time, we will hopefully have figured it out. But by the time you get to September, we've already passed our budget, and they're going to be looking back to determine whether or not Guam's met the requirements or whether we'll be granted an exception. I'm going to guess that there will be a lot of states applying for the waiver, and you would hope there'd be some flexibility. But at the same time, I know that in this third package of federal funding that's being discussed on the Hill, in Congress, that they are already considering a big boost for not just education on the third round, but also for state and local government. So it could be that they end up giving Guam, a lot of federal support for other agencies and other purposes, and then turn around and say you still need to meet this requirement, or we're going to grant you a pass. But we won't know that until after we pass our budget. So I think that's really the tough part.
Okay. You had the PTO meetings last week to discuss the ESF funding and priorities and where PTO thinks it should be spent. What were some of the suggestions or concerns and feedback you received?
Well, we're really talking about, going forward, as we use this second round of funding, we're really talking about looking at ways to, emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're really talking about what is it going to take for school facilities to be safe. And it also envisions the fact that, we still think that online learning will still be a component next year. So a lot of the concerns have been, number one, how do we continue to strengthen the safety measures at school? So a lot more investment in air filters, air filtration systems, a lot of repairing or renovating our school facilities to enable not just better sanitation, but also physical distancing. If the 6-foot distancing requirement is still in place, then when the kids are in the classroom, there needs to be space. When the kids are in the cafeteria, when they're outside, during recess, there needs to be an opportunity for them to be sheltered, but be able to also stay 6 feet apart. So there were requests for things like more seating or benches outside, repair the canopies, renovate the restrooms, add air filters. One of the other requests has to do with plexiglass. Can we get a plexiglass divider for every student, rather than just for the teachers? And so there was a lot of focus on that. And then, of course, the other part is, if there is going to be online learning, let's make sure that all the technology is in place, including strengthening the connections at school, and then using some of the resources for interventions. Increasing our summer school offerings, increasing our credit recovery options, as well as our after-school programs. So I think that was really the gist of it. How can we use the funds to get us back to a new normal, or get us to a new normal, define what that is that works for Guam, and then start to focus on bringing our kids back and helping them catch up from everything that's been lost this past year.
We had Juan Flores on last week, and we were talking about ESF 1 and as well as ESF 2. But with ESF 1, there's a deadline, I guess, to spend all of the money. I want to say it's in March for ESF 1. And he said he did have a balance of, I think, 1.5 or so million. Did GDOE have any money left over from ESF 1?
So we have about, so of the 42 million, we have about 75% of those funds already encumbered or expended as part of our efforts. And so there are remaining funds for basically all entities that received ESF 1. And so what'll have to happen is between now and there are some changing circumstances that we'll have to address. As part of the most recent package where ESF 2 was approved, there was also approved extensions on the use of the funds. So right now we are working with deadlines that are operating with the initial assumptions that everything has to be expended, by September 30th. I believe we were given another year. So now that I think we're just trying to confirm the details and make sure that that's the case. But if there's an extension to be able to use these funds all the way through 2022, which is September 30, 2022, then that'll give us some extra wiggle room to make sure that all the funds that remain can be expended. I think right now we haven't changed the guidance to anybody yet because We're still doing our work with US DOE to confirm that the extension applies to Guam. With everything that happens with Guam, you see it in the news and you see it in the written guidance, but it usually applies to states. So we always go back and say, are you sure this applies to Guam? Because sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And, we just don't want to end up, going the wrong direction. So we just want to double check that, make sure it's confirmed. But if there is an extension, that'll give us more time to expend those funds and, relieve some of that pressure.
I did watch a portion of that budget hearing or virtual informational briefing yesterday. And it ended because of the hearing that was already scheduled for 5:30. So GDOE didn't get a chance to provide, I guess, an update on IEP and special education. Can you provide us what is the latest with those programs?
Well, the issue with special education, I just have to say the bottom line is we want our kids back in school. I mean, that's really the solution. The IEPs that were put in place for most, for all of our students in special education envisioned the supports and services being delivered at the school setting. And when we're not able to go to school, it really limits those services. So a lot of the issues that we are seeing as part of this interim period where not all students are back to face-to-face, that presents a challenge to us because we are limited in our ability to provide services at the home. So a lot of that happens virtually. We don't send one-to-one aides home. What we do is we try to work with the parents. It puts a tremendous load and burden on the parents' shoulders to take up the slack in terms of what teachers and aides would normally be responsible for. So I think as long as that's the situation, we're going to continue to be challenged in serving kids who are at home at this point. What I'm very happy to see is that our special education students who are able to come back face to face, we've been able to accommodate them to come, more than once a week, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times a week, depending on what they work out with their school team. And that's, that really, relieves, a lot of the concerns that I have, because now we get our kids back in school. Now we can provide services. Now our teachers are there, your aides are there, and I'm able to have, feel that the assurances that we provide to our students can be met. And if you have a complaint about what's happening at the school site, I can do something, more directly about that. So I recognize the frustration of what's happening with the students who are at home. We still have the capacity to receive a lot, receive more face-to-face students. We still, we do believe that we are operating in a safe environment, and we encourage and want our students to come back, especially those students in special education who really need those services and need to be, in that classroom setting. So, so that's kind of I think that's the bottom line. As long as we are, in the situation where students are at home, because we're finding students in special education who are at home, and if they are online and their disability still allows them to function online with that's okay, and that's going okay. But we know that there are students with multiple disabilities where the online, portion won't work, where the hard copy, option also has its limitations, and where you need that physical interaction with the teacher, with the aide to address that particular student's needs. In that type of situation, we just, it just can't be met when you have your students stuck at home. And so that's why the focus is get our schools, back get our schools in shape to be able to bring our kids back and meet the safety guidelines that's out there with public health. So that's our goal.
Well, just following up on getting our schools back in shape, what is the update on the Southern High School auditorium, and even just Simon Sanchez High School?
Yeah, Simon Sanchez High School, again, from the outside, it looks, it's like such a long project, because it's ever since I got here, this was a project that was supposed to be move forward, and it just never did. So we finally got the opportunity to take control of the project. And in 2019, we were able to complete the land surveying, component of it. And now in 2020, we worked to get the design awarded, which we were able to do by piecing together whatever resources we could find in our budget to make it happen. And we just said, we got to go ahead. We just got to do it. We can't keep waiting and trying to figure out whether there'll be more resources. So we went ahead and awarded that last year, I believe in October. And then now we're in the first, I would say first third, of the design process, meaning that, the goal is to bring design to 30%. Based on all the information that the architects have been working on with the Simon Sanchez Design Committee, made up a lot of the faculty, staff, with representatives from parents and students, to bring that forward and to be able to have a public meeting on the progress sometime in March. So, we'll be able to showcase where we are, and we're trying to get the design moving as quickly as possible so that we can go ahead and award the construction and financing contract later this year, if everything works smoothly. So that's the progress. The design process has started. It's working. They spent a lot of time gathering and updating information and working with the direct stakeholders. And by the third week of March, we'll be able to present, where we are with about 30% of the design, kind of in place, and then gather more input, and people get a chance to see what the thought process is, what the proposed layout is, and then can have input into any other issues or concerns that might arise from that discussion. So
but do you foresee that design having to go under any sort of change orders to, I guess, comply with like social distancing and things like that?
Well, right now what we're doing is, no, I mean, all of that, we're early enough in the process that all of those concerns can be taken into account at this point. So we shouldn't be at the end of the design and say, oh, wait a minute, let's go backwards and try to meet the public's health requirements. So, all that can be taken into account now, especially with everybody having gone through, last year with, the initial COVID-19 experience. So that's why I think the process is moving along. It's just once we get to March and we can share with the community, I think everybody will get a better sense of the direction that we're going. Okay. And so I look forward to that. I got briefed by them. I'm comfortable with the architect, the work that they're doing. There is a limitation on resources, so we are also conscious of that. This is not an infinite money tree waiting to fund Simon Sanchez. There is a limit in terms of the budgetary, the budgetary side. So all the things that we're talking about needs, we're talking about wants, and we're prioritizing the needs to make sure that we get those done. And if, there is a chance and there are extra resources that are found, then we can consider, the extras, as part of this. With regard to Southern High, I believe I have a meeting with Gita tomorrow to kind of work through the process for how how they will be able to assist us in identifying contributors who would like to take advantage of the tax credit, the $1 million tax credits that were made available to help repair the air conditioning system at Southern High Auditorium. Mm-hmm. So, we're looking forward to that discussion. I know Senator Moylan, helped pass that bill, and a lot of senators are now waiting for a progress report. This is not something that we typically do all the time. So we really need GDA and Department of Rev and Tax to kind of let us know what their role is and how it all works. And then we already had one meeting. This will be our second meeting to kind of get through some of the details. So once we clear that up, I think we'll be able to move forward, and we look forward to announcing bidding out that project for for interested vendors.
Okay. Well, I know you're busy. I just had one more question. It was just a follow up to the letter that you'd sent last week, Friday, after the governor announced PCOR 3 was coming on Monday, and so the return of sports, IIAG requesting basically, just let's team up. And get this going. So, have you heard any response from the IIAG?
Yes, actually, we received a response late last evening. Almost near midnight. But I know they had their meeting, and they had to have a meeting to decide how they were going to proceed. But we know that both ISA and IIAG have been trying to prepare in light of an uncertain sports interscholastic season. We weren't really sure when the governor was going to announce. And I've been pushing for the last couple of weeks, we need a decision one way or the other, because I like to tell the kids yes or no and just be done with it. But I wanted them to also know that we put a lot of thought into our plan, and we felt we could operate a safe season. And if they were comfortable with that, then we were ready to go. So we were glad to know that PCOR 3 was going to include some authorization for interscholastics. And with that, I just issued a general invitation in case any teams were interested in joining us, only because we know that not all of the student athletes who normally come out have come out. And so we know that schools might have difficulty either fielding teams, or if there are not enough teams, there's the chance that the IIAG may not offer the sport. So I think the response, as far as I gave it a quick read and forwarded along, but the response is generally that there will be some sports where IIAG teams will join us, and I believe those sports are softball, baseball, and hopefully track and field if we hold that in the next quarter. Other than that, they have their own sports that they have set up, and they will continue to move forward with those sports, including tennis, beach volleyball, cross country. So again, I guess the bottom line is that yes, there will be some sports where they would be happy to join simply because they don't offer those sports on their schedule. But for all other sports that they're able to support, they've already got the plans in place, and we recognize that time is short and we have to move forward, and can't spend too much time redoing the schedules. So we're satisfied with that, and I'm giving this to my coordinator to go ahead and coordinate with those teams that do want to play, so we can get ready to roll.
All right. Well, thanks, John, for the updates. Anything else you wanted to let out?
Well, no, I'm sorry, and I know I was a little earlier today. I'm about to jump off and go to the first day of our virtual conference for teachers on service learning. We do the Service Learning Summit every year, and we work with partners like Homeland Security. We know our university programs are nonprofit organizations, and we work with our teachers, and then on Friday with our students to kind of talk about what the service learning opportunities are on island. Talk about how we can create those types of opportunities, and also address some of the critical issues that we face on Guam, things like food resilience, energy conservation, how we preserve our natural resources. So a lot of good topics, but also a lot of opportunities for our kids to really get back and involved in the community. I think this time we're just going to be talking about how do we do that, in a COVID-19 environment. It's not going to be the same. What I missed from the last year was the coastal cleanup.
Yeah.
The crowds that go out. I know we can't do that in the same way anymore, but I do think it's important that the kids still have opportunities to learn about service opportunities and then to participate. So hopefully we'll hear some good ideas for how we move forward and do so in the next school year. So I'll be off to welcome everybody to the summit this year.
All right. Well, thanks again. We always appreciate your access and these weekly updates.
Definitely, John.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Take care.
Have fun at your service learning conference.
All right. Thanks.
See ya.